Welcome to another edition of 30 Minutes with the Author. I'm your host, Lori Crever. This program we're joined by Ginger Applegarth, author of Wake Up and Smell the Money. Welcome to the show, Ginger.
Thanks for having me, Lori.
Yes, my pleasure. How did you get into financial planning? Was that the original career that you started out interested in? Because this is such an intimate area of dealing with people's lives. It's really like being a physician.
It's a lot like being a therapist, actually. Even more than being a physician, it's like being a therapist. And in a way, you are a voyeur because you see into people's lives and see how they deal with money. And for many people, money is more personal to them even than any other aspect of their lives.
Yes, yes.
But I actually majored in political science and minored in French in college. I was going to work for a couple of years and go back and get my doctorate. It was in 1974, couldn't get a job, went to work for an insurance company, and they paid for me to get to study and receive my chartered life underwriter and certified financial planning designations. So I did it because I loved school. And in the meantime, I had married and I found myself with a child, and then I found myself bedridden for 5 years. So after that period was over with, and I had an experimental operation and was in a body cast for a year, thought I was still going to go back and get my degree. I had been accepted to the Kennedy School at Harvard, and my doctor said, "We don't think you'll ever be physically well enough to be able to handle a course load." So I went back to the one thing I knew how to do, and you know, Lori, it was the best thing that could have ever happened, because all the experiences I had in my early 20s and in my 30s, the difficulty of being bedridden with 2 little kids, trying to find money to pay the mortgage, trying to scrape by, not knowing whether I was ever going to be well enough to function on my own or even to not need nursing care, taught me an enormous amount about how you cope with events that come into your life, and it made me much more empathetic to people with problems instead of just blaming people for not having money or thinking that they had done something wrong. A lot of times life just hits you with some surprises and you have to manage from there.
Yes, that's very true. How interesting. Well, now you talk about in the book, and it really makes sense now hearing about your background, seasons, fresh starts for any point in your life.
Right.
And did that come from what you were just describing, you know, like life circumstances? They're not always in your control, and it can really impact somebody financially.
That's right. It actually came from 2 sources. One is from my own experience, but also I've now been a financial planner for over 25 years, and I have seen over and over again people who come to me just as their lives are going through a dramatic change, or they suddenly wake up one day and realize, I'm 55 and I haven't saved a dime, or my kids are going to college, starting college in a year, and I haven't done anything about it. The whole point of Wake Up and Smell the Money, and the subtitle is Fresh Starts at Any Age and Any Season of Your Life, is that you can make a fresh start at any point and you can be successful. I have seen stories of clients I've worked with, and it's not me because they do it, who have been able to turn their lives around and been able to achieve their goals because they dig in their heels and decide, you know, from today on, I'm going to change my life, I'm going to forget the past, because if you think about the past and think about the financial mistakes you've made, it doesn't do you any good because the negative tapes start rolling in your head and you're thinking, I'm no good with money, I'll never be able to save, I don't know anything about investing. No. Look at the mistakes you've made in the past as training wheels. You weren't able to ride a 2-wheeler the first time you ever got on it. You weren't able to drive a car the first time you got behind the wheel. Right. Think of whatever you've done in the past as training and experience for the way you're going to change your life now. And that's why in the book I take actions and I break them down into very easy daily goals and daily things to do. Because money is all about behavior. We know what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to save more, spend less, and invest better, and make sure you have the right kind of insurance. You know, it's not rocket science. What's hard is changing your behaviors, because you've built up all those behaviors around money over time, over your entire life, and it takes a while to change.
Yes, yes. Now, what would you recommend for, you have some great stories in there of people that actually picked up something from when they were growing up, and they've used it later on in their life, and it's really has had an impact on how they handle money. Let's talk about some tips for parents, parenting children. What age should you start indoctrinating your child or children into learning about the concept of money and spending and planning and budgeting.
Lori, I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is a major problem I see with clients who come to me who are in financial trouble. Very often it's because their parents did not teach them anything about money growing up. They just got money when they asked for it. They are 45 years old and have never balanced a checkbook in their lives, and they have nothing to their names, although they have six-figure incomes. I know that sounds hard to believe.
It is hard to believe.
But it is much more common than you think. For example, over half of American households carry credit card debt from month to month, and a substantial portion of those households are high-income households. We all think everybody else is doing a better job with their money than we are.
Yes.
Not the case at all. In terms of kids, I recommend that you start very young, younger than it used to be. And let's face it, kids talk about indoctrination. They are indoctrinated from from birth into certain things. I used to joke that my kids had some kind of genetic knowledge of McDonald's, because I swear when they were 18 months old, we'd drive by a McDonald's, they'd see the golden arches and start pointing, even though they didn't watch TV, so they couldn't have possibly seen ads, but they knew. It was like osmosis.
Burger King, McDonald's.
Right, they know these things. And they watch television these days, and companies are spending billions of dollars to have advertising agencies create ads that are going to make your kids want to buy. I mean, they do it for us. That's why it's so hard for us, and they also do it for our kids.
Yeah.
So start when they're young. Start when they're maybe 4 or 5. Whenever you start is good, remember, but
okay.
As early as possible, and give them a weekly allowance for which they need to do a couple of small chores. It might be just putting the forks and knives on the table, depending on their age. Out of that money, the first thing they do is they set aside 10% for college. And they also set aside another 10% or even more if they're willing to save it for some short-term thing that they want to do or have. For example, it may be they want a new skateboard or a new boombox, or it may be that you're going on vacation and they want to have their own spending money. And by the way, this is what I recommend for all families, is you put a vacation box on the table and everybody puts money in through the year. Their change. And when you go on that vacation, first of all, your kids will complain a lot less, and they will have a real sense of ownership and pride because they worked and they sacrificed for that vacation. And you will too.
I like that.
But anyway, with kids, especially with this short-term goal, something they want to buy, that they're saving for, you match their savings.
Okay.
It's not much. It's not going to be a real dent in your wallet, but they see it growing. And you set up bank accounts where they are putting their money in for college and for their goals. And when they get those statements and they go to the bank and make those deposits, they feel really terrific. And a lot of parents these days figure, if my kids work, then that's their money. I shouldn't ask them to touch it. I shouldn't ask them to save any for college. At the same time, we're struggling, absolutely struggling to make ends meet for college. And by the way, if you're struggling, it's not you. College costs have quadrupled in the last 20 years, and median family income's gone up 12%.
Oh my gosh.
So you have to ask your teenagers to save.
College has gone up four times.
Median family income has gone up 12%.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Okay, so kids starting at age 4 or 5, you can have really a legitimate talk with them about saving for college.
That's right, and saving.
I think
see,
that's
what you're
great.
doing is you're teaching them habits of paying themselves first, of saving first, and then spending. We have it backwards. We spend first, and then whatever's left over, we save.
Yes.
Not the way it should be. It should be the other way. You should be saving first and then spending what's left over.
Yes. Well, you make such a good point, what you had said in the beginning about how money is so intimately tied to our behavior, because it makes me think that somebody who really is mature is able to embrace the concept of future.
Yes.
And that's really what financial planning is. It's thinking beyond the end of your nose. It's thinking beyond going out to a restaurant or buying a leather jacket today, when you talk a lot about retirement savings and people, when they should start doing retirement planning. Let's talk about that next, retirement planning, of really being able to consider and see yourself, what's the lifestyle that you're going to have when you're done with the work part of your life.
That's so important, and that's why when I work with clients, the first meeting I have with them, we do not talk dollars. We talk about their goals, and I have, of course, as you've seen, a lot of charts in the book that you can fill in that are designed to help you get control
and really make it practical, and you can see
and to
where
bring the future into the present, so that you've got a fighting chance. Otherwise, it's instant gratification, and you will never save anything. But you write down your goals, and for example, for retirement, I say to clients, what do you want what do you want to do in retirement? What would bring you a lot of pleasure? And I hear things such as go on a cruise, go visit my grandchildren, be on the golf course every day, play tennis. So in the book, or you can just write it down on a piece of paper, you write down your goal, retirement, and then you write down in a very pleasurable visual image associated with it. And it's not just visual. You think of how you would be feeling, what you would be smelling, what you might be tasting. You try to embrace all the senses and bring them to that goal, so that when you're faced with a desire to spend today, for example, you stop, you bring that image to mind, and you think, would I rather have or do what's looking at me right now today, or would I rather save that money and so that I can go on that cruise or play golf or play tennis or visit the grandkids. And that way it's much easier to defer gratification, and you end up spending money on the things that are important to you.
Yeah, it's like an instant prioritization.
Right. Otherwise, if we sleepwalk through life, and it's very common. I mean, I've been guilty of this myself in the past. You go to the ATM machine, and by the way, the average American household takes out $6,000 a year from the ATM. Most of it they cannot account for.
Right. Yep.
And a lot of that money is money you can save. So what I recommend you do is you pull out your ATM receipt every time you pull out your cash, and you write down on the ATM receipt where you spent your money. And it becomes a habit. I've been doing this for over 10 years, and it's to the point where if I go to spend money and I don't have a pen to write down where I spent it, I'm anxious until I get and write it down
out of your mind.
See, I've changed my behavior, and it's all about behavior, and it's about waking up to where your money goes. That's why I use this where your money for a week strategy.
Yes, let's talk about that. Let's talk about where your money for a week.
Right. This also, in addition to helping you see where your money's going, it also makes you appreciate your job a lot more, because you see the value.
It's not so vague, this vague concept of your salary, and it gets, most of us, it gets electronically deposited.
Right.
So you don't really experience the money, but you've got sort of a solution for that.
To wake up and smell the money means you experience your money. It becomes real to you. If you walk into a store with a credit card, studies show this over and over again, and it's always the same percentage, which I think is really interesting. Over the years, it's always been 1/3 more. If you walk into a store with a credit card, you will spend 1/3 more than if you walk into a store with cash.
With cash.
Right.
Ooh.